Why Emily Wilson didn't like Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, the translator explained. Warning: this video contains spoilers for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey and discusses Homer's original Odyssey. The opinions discussed in this video are Emily Wilson's published views from interviews and essays. They represent her interpretation of the film, not objective fact. Many critics and audiences have reached very different conclusions. Now, let's begin. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey has become one of the biggest films of the year. Critics have praised its breathtaking visuals, practical effects, powerful performances, and ambitious attempt to bring Homer's ancient epic to the big screen. But while audiences celebrated the film, one review quickly stood out from the rest. It didn't come from a movie critic. It came from one of the world's leading Homer scholars, Emily Wilson. If that name sounds familiar, there's a good reason. Wilson's acclaimed English translation of The Odyssey helped introduce Homer's epic to millions of modern readers. In fact, Christopher Nolan himself has acknowledged that her translation, particularly its famous opening description of Odysseus as a complicated man, influenced his interest in adapting the story. So when Wilson publicly criticized the finished film, many fans were surprised. How could the translator, whose work inspired Nolan, end up disagreeing with his vision? Did she hate the movie? Did she think Nolan misunderstood Homer? Or was the debate more complicated than the headlines suggested? Let's explain. Who is Emily Wilson? Before looking at her criticism, it's important to understand why her opinion matters. Emily Wilson is a professor of classical studies at the University of Pennsylvania and one of the world's most respected experts on ancient Greek literature. In 2017, she became the first woman to publish a complete English translation of Homer's Odyssey. Her version was praised for its clear language, poetic rhythm, and careful attention to the original Greek text. Rather than using overly formal language, Wilson wanted modern readers to experience the poem the way ancient audiences once did. Her translation became an international bestseller and is now widely taught in schools and universities. Ironically, Nolan has openly said that Wilson's translation helped shape his own approach to adapting Homer's masterpiece. That connection made her later criticism even more significant. She didn't hate the movie. One of the biggest misconceptions online is that Emily Wilson completely hated Christopher Nolan's film. That's not actually true. In interviews after the film's release, Wilson acknowledged that the movie is visually spectacular and undeniably entertaining. She praised Nolan as a gifted filmmaker and even said she enjoyed watching the movie with her own family. Most importantly, she celebrated the fact that millions of people were suddenly interested in reading Homer's original poem. From her perspective, any film that encourages audiences to discover ancient literature is ultimately a positive thing. So her criticism wasn't about whether the movie was enjoyable. It was about whether it truly captured what she believes makes The Odyssey one of the greatest works ever written. A complicated man. Perhaps Wilson's biggest criticism involves the character of Odysseus himself. The very first line of her famous translation describes him as a complicated man. For Wilson, those three words summarize the entire poem. Odysseus isn't simply a hero. He's clever. He's compassionate. He's deceptive. He's brave. He's arrogant. He's capable of kindness and incredible cruelty. Those contradictions are what make him fascinating. Wilson has argued that Nolan's version simplifies many of those complexities. Instead of presenting a deeply conflicted man, she believes the film often treats Odysseus as a more traditional action hero haunted by his past. In her view, that changes the emotional center of the story. The missing themes. Wilson has repeatedly explained that her concerns weren't about individual scenes being changed. Every adaptation changes things. Instead, she believes the film emphasizes spectacle over some of Homer's most important themes. The original poem isn't simply about monsters, cyclopes, sirens, and sea voyages. It's about identity. It's about storytelling. It's about memory. It's about the meaning of home after years of war. Throughout the poem, Odysseus constantly reinvents himself. Sometimes he lies. Sometimes he hides his identity. Sometimes he tells different versions of the same events. Wilson believes these layers are essential to understanding the character. She argues that the film focuses more on physical survival than psychological transformation. Penelope and the Gods. Another point Wilson discussed is the role of Penelope. In Homer's poem, Penelope is much more than a faithful wife waiting at home. She is intelligent, politically aware, and every bit as clever as Odysseus. Their relationship becomes one of the emotional foundations of the entire story. Wilson felt the film reduced some of that complexity, making the reunion less emotionally rich than it is in the original epic. She also noted that the gods play a much larger role in Homer. Athena constantly guides Odysseus. Poseidon relentlessly opposes him. Zeus influences the balance between fate and free will. By reducing the presence of the gods, Nolan creates a story that feels more grounded and human. Wilson understands why a filmmaker might choose that direction. She simply believes it changes the meaning of Homer's world. Why Nolan made those changes? Of course, Christopher Nolan was never trying to create a word-for-word translation of the poem. He was making a modern blockbuster. Film and literature are very different mediums. A poem that unfolds over hundreds of pages cannot simply be transferred directly onto the screen. Nolan has always been interested in psychological storytelling, practical filmmaking, and large-scale spectacle. His version of the Odyssey reflects those strengths. Rather than adapting every conversation and every poetic detail, he condenses events into a cinematic journey designed for modern audiences. That's why many viewers who had never read Homer still found the movie engaging and emotionally powerful. Why critics are divided? Wilson's criticism has sparked a fascinating debate. Many classicists agree that Nolan simplifies certain philosophical ideas found in Homer's poem. Others argue that expecting complete literary accuracy misses the purpose of filmmaking. After all, every famous adaptation changes its source material. Peter Jackson changed The Lord of the Rings. Denis Villeneuve changed Dune. Even Shakespeare's plays have been rewritten countless times throughout history. The question isn't whether changes were made. The question is whether those changes create a compelling film. On that point, audiences remain divided. Some agree completely with Wilson. Others believe Nolan successfully transformed an ancient epic into a thrilling cinematic experience. Both perspectives can exist at the same time. Why this debate matters. Perhaps the most interesting part of this story isn't that Emily Wilson criticized Christopher Nolan. It's that two people who deeply admire Homer arrived at very different interpretations of the same epic. Wilson approaches the Odyssey as a scholar and translator. Her priority is preserving the complexity of Homer's ideas. Nolan approaches the story as a filmmaker. His priority is creating an emotionally powerful movie that works for millions of viewers around the world. Neither approach is automatically right or wrong. They simply have different goals. Ironically, Wilson herself has admitted that Nolan's movie has encouraged many people to pick up Homer's Odyssey for the very first time. In that sense, both the translator and the filmmaker are helping keep one of humanity's oldest stories alive. Final thoughts. So, why didn't Emily Wilson like Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey? Not because she disliked Christopher Nolan, not because she expected a perfect page-by-page adaptation, but because she believes the film simplifies Odysseus, reduces several key relationships, and shifts the focus away from themes that she considers central to Homer's original masterpiece. At the same time, she has praised the movie's craftsmanship and welcomed the renewed global interest in ancient Greek literature that it has inspired. Perhaps that's the real lesson here. Great works of art invite debate. Some viewers want complete faithfulness to the original. Others celebrate bold new interpretations. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey has accomplished something remarkable. Nearly 3,000 years after Homer first told this story, people around the world are still passionately arguing about what The Odyssey truly means. And that may be the greatest tribute any adaptation can receive. What do you think? Do you agree with Emily Wilson's criticism? Or do you think Christopher Nolan successfully reimagined The Odyssey for a modern audience? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more The Odyssey explainers, Greek mythology, movie breakdowns, hidden details, and entertainment news. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.